In this demonstration, it's now time for us to get our hands on log analytics, and we'll go through a number of steps in this process. First of all, we're going to take a look at analyzing data using search queries. Then we'll look at visualizing data using the various dashboards, and finally look at how you can potentially create alerts based on some of those queries. So to get started, let's head over to the Azure portal. Okay, and in the Azure portal, the first thing we need to do is go ahead and create our new log analytics workspace. So let's click Create a Resource. In the search box, type Log Analytics, select it, and go ahead and select Create. This now gives us the blade for creating our new workspace, so go ahead and give it a name. Choose your subscription, along with a resource group to put that workspace in. In my case, I'm going to use SL-operations and choose a location. You will notice that there's not a lot of locations here. For the US, primarily you'll just use East US. There are Canada, UK, etc., other regions there if needed. Go ahead and choose your pricing tier, and just note, you've got three options. You've got the free tier, the per node OMS licensing, and per gigabyte standalone. The free tier will be enough for any demos you try to do yourself here, as this allows up to 500 gig free to get started with OMS. So select the free tier and click OK, and click OK again, and that will now begin provisioning our workspace. And this is basically where all of our data is going to go into from all the different data sources that we connect in. It's also where we're going to create our dashboards and queries and everything else there as well. So we'll fast forward as this completes. It usually takes about 3 to 4 minutes for it to completely provision the workspace. Alright, and we can see that our deployment succeeded. We can go ahead and select that, and this should take us directly to our log analytics page, and then we can go ahead and select our workspace, which you'll see in the bottom. Okay, and now we're in our log analytics workspace, and a couple of things to note. So first of all, in the middle of the screen, you've got this management section. So we've got overview, which we'll see later on, kind of gives you an overview dashboard, log search, which is going to be where we primarily spend a lot of our time, the OMS portal, and the view designer as well for designing various views. But before we can actually make any use of this, we do need to configure some data sources. So on the left hand side, let's scroll down all the way down to data sources. And you can see there that we have virtual machines, storage account logs, Azure activity log, etc. Let's start by just configuring a couple of virtual machines to be data sources for this workspace. So we select virtual machines. You'll see we have a couple of virtual machines there. And you'll notice that I've got Linux VM 01, Windows VM 01. They are not connected to any workspace. But if I look at SLDC 01, that was previously connected to another log analytics workspace. And if I want to, I can go into this one, disconnect it from the previous workspace. That'll take a moment, and when that's complete, I can then connect it to this workspace, so the logs start to come into this log analytics workspace. Now do note, it is possible that we can query across workspaces if we want to, but this is the primary workspace the data is going to be a source for. If we go back to the virtual machines though, and go ahead and select Linux VM 01, I simply go in here, you can see this one isn't connected at all. Go ahead and click connect, and that will begin installing the agent on that machine and connecting it to this workspace. At the same time, let's go over to the Windows virtual machine, select this one, and connect it in as well, and that will begin installing the agent on that machine. It is also possible to automatically install these agents, these monitoring agents. You go into Azure Security Center, and it's a policy you can set there, as you may have seen if you watched the security module previously as well. So while that's going on, let's go back over to our Skylines workspace. And let's scroll down again, and let's add a few more data sources. So if we go to the Azure activity log, this is all our Azure activity, when we're giving people rights, when anybody's doing operations in Azure. Same thing, I can select my subscription and decide, okay, all the activity logs for Skyline's primary subscription, I want to connect to this data source as well. You can see that happens pretty much instantaneously. If we go back again and scroll up now, we've got enough data sources. We do need to decide what we actually want to capture. So if we go to advanced settings and then go into data, you can see that we have Windows event logs. So for example, these pretty much correspond to the Windows event logs in Windows. So if I type in system, Click that, and we can go ahead and add that. By the same token, if I wanted the application logs from Windows, I could type application, add those in, and let's add some Windows performance counters as well. So let's go in there, and it's got the defaults already available for you there. All you have to do is just choose which ones you want, or just select this box, and that will add all of them. So that means all the performance data for reads, writes, CPU processor time, all of that will now be sent to Log Analytics. Okay, and lastly, let's go ahead and save that. And that's confirmed as saved. And then we'll fast forward here while we just wait for those agents to install, and then we can go through some of the queries. Alright, so a couple of those Windows machines now have their agents installed and are connected to the workspace. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of log searches that you can use. So go ahead and select log search. And first thing to note is you do have an option. You can do your log searches straight away in this section of the portal, or you can click Analytics, which I'll go ahead and select. This opens up a new portal for you and allows you to do multi-line queries, more advanced. There's a lot more you can do in this section. It gives you a lot more details on functions, all the different categories that you can choose from, all the different fields and tables basically that are in the Log Analytics workspace. But to begin, I'm just going to go back to log search itself and just start off with some basic queries. It is important to slowly build up on the query language. You don't need to know too much for the course, but if you do want to get a little bit more advanced with it, on the right hand side are all these getting started links. So there's a query cheat sheet, there's a getting started with query section, there's a whole website. Actually, if we select this, and it takes you to docs.loganalytics.io, and this is a whole learning section, so you can click learn, getting started, a whole bunch of queries here. There's a whole bunch of examples that you can use. There's a whole bunch of videos as well. So plenty of material out there to get started. Microsoft obviously wants people to use this tool, and so they put a lot of effort into kind of getting people ramped up on it. But let's go back to log search, and let's start to look at the beginning of this. Let's just start by saying, okay, I want to look at all collected data. So it's going to put in a query called search and then a star at the end, and this literally just pulls in all our results. So you can see there's 2,000 results. This is data that started to come in from the various systems we have. In fact, you can see the very first one on the right, Windows VM 01. This is coming from the object, the network adapter, and it's the bytes received per second. Now on the left, you'll notice that you've got the types. So we chose to ingest performance logs, event logs, Azure activity, and heartbeat comes as part of the Windows logs that we brought in. So the real key thing here is if you want to just look at the performance logs, you can click perf and go ahead and scroll down and click apply. And that's now going to just filter that out into just those performance logs. And you can also choose to look at it in a table as opposed to the list view if you want to get an easier look at things. Now the other thing you can do in the query box, instead of typing in search star where type equals perf, if you know the table that you're looking for, so in my case I might just be looking for everything to do with perf, I can just type in perf and go ahead and select run, and there's my results for that. If I just want all the detail on heartbeat, I can type in heartbeat, go ahead and select run, and that's now just going to bring up all those heartbeat pieces of information that we have. And in fact, let's select one of these. Let's go ahead and select the first one. And a heartbeat is just when the agent checks in. So if we scroll down, this is a timestamp, so 10:15 based on the time zone this is in. It's connected in. There's the IP of it. There's the computer. It's a Windows machine, etc. If I go back to list view, the other thing to notice is you can see that all these items are clickable here. So if I say, okay, I just want to know about heartbeats on this computer, I can click this, and you can see that it searches Windows VM 01. I can also do it the other way. I can take this away and say, I can pipe it to where computer, and if I start typing it in, you can see it's got IntelliSense built in, equals Windows VM 01. Select run. And you'll notice that doesn't work immediately, and that's because it's case sensitive. So I do need to go in here and change this to all caps because I built my machine with all caps. Now I can select run, and that will pull that back. So that's heartbeats where computer is Windows VM 01. Okay, so let's build on this a little bit more. So perhaps I want to just look at where the time generated was within the last day. So I can go ahead and pipe this query to another one and say, okay, the results of that where, I can put time generated. I can say greater than ago is the term we use in log analytics. And I can do like 1 day, I could do 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, etc. But I'm going to choose 1 day and select run. And you can see I still get my 11 results. If we try 1M, we get nothing. If we try 1 hour, we can see we still get 11 results because all of those heartbeats came within the last hour. Let's take a look at another one then as well. So let's switch off heartbeat and go for something around event. So I can say event and hit run on that. And we can see lots and lots of events. In fact, if I expand one of these out, I can see my event log, event level. And let's see if we've got an event ID. So there we go. So this is the time service in Windows. It's event ID. Now, if I wanted to, I could also just say the same thing up here. I can say, okay, where event ID equals, and then just give it my Windows event ID number that I'm looking for. So if I say like 7036 as an example, I'm going to get all those events. So for both of my Windows machines, because they're both connected, and this is just one of the Windows events you can get, and you can scroll in and look at that more if you want to. And this is basically saying the connected devices platform service entered the run-in state. It's just a standard information on an event log. If we want to also, we can get a little bit more creative and start to render things like time charts. Maybe I don't want to, keep looking at things in tables like this. So I can delete this, and let's do a chart of CPU utilization of all VMs in the past day. So we're going to type in perf. Going to do where time generated greater than go 1D. And now I'm going to choose my counter for performance. I'm going to say where counter name equals, and this one is at % processor time. And I can immediately query there. We're going to do a little bit more with it, but let's just go ahead and run when we're at this point. Okay, so we definitely still get in our results for processor time. Now I can go a little further and say, okay, I want to summarize average counter value by computer. And I'm going to render this as a time chart. And all of that, and what it does is you can see on the bottom, we don't have a lot of data because we just brought those machines in, but if we look at the top, you can see both of those machines, SLDC01 and Windows VM01, are there on this time chart instead. So as more data comes in, it would basically be a line graph over time. Now what I can do is change my bin size. So you can see how we've got bin time generated 15, that's 15-minute intervals, and I'm basically separating them out into these marginal units of 15 minutes. But I could go in here and change this to 1-minute intervals, go ahead and select run, and you will see that we do get more of that graph starting to form there. So that hopefully gives you a good idea of just log searches. This is probably it for the course as far as log searches themselves go, but I encourage you to kind of check out that website docs.loganalytics.io and just continue to learn to do queries, performance queries, event queries, etc. But we are going to shift gears a little bit, and let's go back to our workspace. And let's now take one of these queries and let's just build a very simple dashboard for this. So if we go into View Designer, this is one area we can do it. And essentially we can say, okay, here's an overview tile, so that I want to position on the top of my dashboard. And that goes in this overview section on the right here. And then under View Dashboard, this is where I put additional widgets that I might want to use. So we'll just do a couple of very basic ones. Let's just take the donut one, select that. and you can see that comes up and it's already populated. There's a query on the right hand side. If you scroll down, you can look at that query. You can grab that entire query if you want to and just play around with it, modify it just like you did in the other queries previously. And you can see this one basically takes us total count of the alerts and logs that we have, and then categorizes them by the top three. So we can see we've got perf logs, event logs, and heartbeat logs that are in there. The next thing we would do then is go into our view dashboard, and now we can add additional things. We can add additional queries. So if somebody clicks that donut tile, they can go in here and see these additional queries. We can add additional things on top. I'll just close this one down. 2 numbers and a list. If I scroll out a little bit so you can see more. You can see there, so computers sending data, Windows VM, SLDC 01, we can see that. Stacks of line charts, a lot of these are in preview as well, but you can see them. So you've got some examples, data types over time, data from computers over time. If we select these, we can certainly edit the query as well. If I scroll all the way to the right hand side and then scroll down, you'll see it's all made up of queries. So this very first line chart is this query, the second line chart is this query over here. Scroll further down, we've got that third chart, and that's another query. So you can go ahead and build those queries in the query designer. You could go into the larger view. If I go up to the analytics view, we can go in here. Again, there's some example queries, like all events, by time generated. You can double click these, run these. It's going to give you all that data, in the bottom here. I can look at charts and things of that data, and then I can just take that and put that directly in visualizations that I can then publish to my dashboard. The other thing you can do also, if we go back to the view designer and go back to our main section here, if we go to OMS portal, this will take us to an overview portal that we can use for managing our environment. So it's kind of a nice overview dashboard that you can present to the organization. So there's nothing there by default, but again, I can go and click the plus sign. That takes me to the view designer that you just saw, and I can publish various widgets there. But in addition, there's something called the solutions gallery. So if I click this, there are a whole bunch of things already built in that Microsoft has created that you can simply grab and go with. So if you use these first of all, in fact, again, you can get all the queries from them, use them, modify them, do what you need to do, and put them in your dashboard. So if we just want something on agent health, I can select this one, go ahead and add that to our dashboard. That's going to add the solution and all the queries and widgets and things for us there. If I go back to the solution gallery while that one's installing, let's grab another couple in here. Let's go all the way to the right. We'll show you one which requires additional recovery. So network performance monitor is a good example of that. So if we click add on this one, and now let's go back to our home screen. These should start to populate very soon. If not, it helps to just give a refresh on the very top, and you'll probably see them appear in there. So there we go. So agent health, if I select this one, you can see total count of agents 2. So only 2 of our 3 machines are checking in currently. And if I select this one, scroll in here, and I can see all these additional widgets that have been created for us, and I can perhaps click one of these, and it brings up the log search, and again there is the log query that I can grab. If I go back to the dashboard, I can also look at this other one, network performance monitor, and you'll notice that some of them say solution requires additional configuration. So if we select this one, it'll give you the additional configuration instructions that you need to perform. So in this case, there's some firewall ports and things you need to open up in order to use network performance monitor. Once you've done that and configured everything correctly with PowerShell, then this one will start working as well. So idea being is get all your queries, decide on what you really care about and what you want to visualize on a dashboard, and then start to build dashboards that make sense for that. Last thing we'll show you is just about alerting. So the other thing you can do is back in the workspace, go to alerts on the left hand side, and I'll zoom back in, and similar kind of process. I can create a new alert rule, but now what I can do is add it based off a query as well. So there's my target, which is this workspace. I add my target criteria, so I can do a custom log search. I can just say, okay, all events. We'll just do that for the moment, and you can see we've got all events there, and this is just the query that's built in again. I can choose the condition for when I, decide to fire off the alert. So I can say, okay, greater than 1. So obviously this will definitely fire off. And the period in minutes and the frequency. So this is how often it's going to check. And then go ahead and click done. Scroll down to define alert details. And this is the alert rule name you give it. So I can just say, all events. This is a demo. Choose the severity, so I can say, okay, this is critical, warning, or informational, so we'll say this is warning. And then I define something called my action group. So if I expand this out and I create a new action group, this is the group I want to target with the alert. So this could be, IT support. And I can say, okay, this is all my subscription, my resource group. Here's my unique action, so I can say email team. And I can say my action type might be to send an email. The other things to look at those, you've got a option for a webhook. You can do ITSM connection, so to things like ServiceNow. And then I've also got automation runbook. So perhaps I don't just want to notify someone, perhaps I want to take some action in response to this event. I would use an automation runbook. If I want to talk to a web service endpoint, I can use a webhook. If I want to just create a change ticket or something to say, hey, this happened, I can create an incident ticket in many cases, not just a change ticket. I could do that and then create my change ticket if the automation runbook executes. And then, or I could just email, right? So I can select email, choose the details, the email teams. In my case, I'll just put in, nick.collier@skylinesit.com. I can send text message if I want to as well. Select OK, select OK again, and that's my group completed. Once that's created, we should be able to move a little further. It takes about 10 or 15 seconds here. There we go. Choose my email subject, and I can just put a, alert from Azure. Again, I can customize these. And one thing I do need to still do, I created my action group, but I still need to select it. So we'll hit select action group, select IT support. The good thing is once you've created those action groups, you don't necessarily have to go back in and define them every time. You'll just create the new alerts and then choose the people or the events you want to take place when the alert fires off. So I go ahead and click create alert rule, and that will now create that alert rule. So whenever those events trigger, in this case this query is just grabbing all these events, and when it's greater than 1 it's going to fire an alert off to me. That will send off. The other thing you'll notice, if we go over to Outlook now and just look at my email, you'll notice that I got an email that said, that was easy, you're now in the Azure Monitor Action Group ITS, so your users will get notified when you put them into one of those action groups. They'll get this email that lets them know they're part of that group, and they'll get notified in those events that you've correlated to that action group. And with that, this concludes this demonstration, and hopefully this gives you a good overview of log analytics. I'm sure you'll definitely be using it over and over again as you get more and more familiar with Azure.